The history you believe you know about the collapse of civilizations is a convenient lie. Empires don't suddenly fall. They crumble in predictable patterns that no one wants to admit. The fourth stage is where all empires meet their end, and we are witnessing it right now. Every great civilization follows the same path to glory. Rome, at its peak in the 2nd century, controlled a quarter of the world's population. The Tang dynasty transformed China into a cultural melting pot that would define Asia for 1,000 years. The British Empire in 1913 embraced a quarter of the Earth's surface. The United States, at the end of the 20th century, an unprecedented hegemony. The dollar, its language, its movies, a military presence in 130 nations, all without exception, reached a perfect balance point between expansion and sustainability, a fragile moment where prosperity seemed infinite. It's always at the peak that the first fault occurs. Rome expanded beyond its capacity to govern. Britain overestimated its colonial control. And then, human error. Not a simple failure, but a fatal decision made by leaders who believed in their own invincibility. Diocletian, facing economic pressures in Rome, instituted price controls that paralyzed commerce. The American Congress, in 2008, allowed Wall Street to become bigger than the very economy it was supposed to serve. The Tang mandarins, to finance unnecessary wars, imposed taxes that crushed their own productive base. In each case, leaders convinced of their exceptionality broke the very rules that built their greatness. What comes next is what historians fear to admit: the spiral of chaos, the third phase of collapse. It's not poverty that destroys empires, it's the loss of trust. Ordinary Romans lost faith in the denarius when its silver content dropped from 95 to 0.5%. The Chinese lost faith in their emperors when promises of protection against Mongol invasions proved empty. The British lost faith in their empire when the costs outweighed the benefits. Trust, once broken, never fully recovered. The monetary system is always the first to show cracks. When Rome debased its currency, citizens responded by hoarding. When the Federal Reserve injected trillions after 2008, the wealthy converted dollars into real assets, quietly moving away from the system they swore to defend. In just 12 years, the value of the American dollar fell 40% against essential goods, while the national debt soared from 11 to 31 trillion. Numbers that hide a deeper truth. When confidence evaporates, even the most loyal begin to look for the exit. This is where we enter the fourth phase, where empires invariably die. The desperation of power. Elites, feeling control slip away, react not with reform, but with force. Diocletian divided the empire into four, creating a bureaucracy that suffocated what remained of Roman vitality. The last Tang emperor executed ministers and confiscated properties. The British Parliament sent more troops to suppress revolts in the colonies, only to discover that military force cannot replace lost legitimacy. Today we see the same signs. Central banks that can no longer stimulate real economies despite negative interest rates. Governments that monitor citizens while ignoring growing inequality. Corporations that capture regulators. Elites who isolate themselves in fortified enclaves while preaching unity. The pattern is clear to those who have the courage to see. When institutions lose legitimacy, coercion replaces consent. History teaches us that the fourth phase is where civilizations make their final choice. Great Britain, confronted with its imperial decline after World War II, chose peaceful transition, transforming itself into a smaller but sustainable nation. Rome, on the other hand, resorted to extreme centralization and militarization, accelerating its own fall. Tang China fragmented into warring states. The pattern repeats because it emanates from human nature itself. Concentrated power, once threatened, rarely yields gracefully. We are now witnessing the fourth phase of the American empire. Once respected institutions face unprecedented levels of distrust. The world currency, once unquestionable, faces multiple challenges. The middle class, the backbone of any stable civilization, has contracted for 5 consecutive decades. Physical infrastructure deteriorates while the virtual thrives, exactly as happened with Roman roads while their army lost strength. What history shows us is not just what was, but what could be. There is a fifth phase in the pattern of collapse that few discuss: rebirth through decentralization. After Rome's fall, monastic communities emerged that preserved knowledge. After the Tang collapse, commercial city-states emerged. After the British Empire, a commonwealth of independent nations. The choice we make now will determine whether we enter the fifth phase with grace or convulsion. The signs are already visible to those who know how to observe. Local communities rebuilding resilient economies, technologies enabling cooperation without hierarchy, alternative currencies emerging not through ideology, but practical necessity. A younger generation that no longer places blind faith in centralized institutions. The true secret kept in history's vaults is not that empires fall. It's that they must fall so something new can be born. Centralization creates fragility, and fragility eventually finds its breaking point. This is not a fate to fear, but a transition to be navigated with wisdom. The fourth phase, the desperation of power, is where we find ourselves now. Elites will fight to maintain the status quo. Institutions will resist reform. Markets will suffer convulsions as old certainties disintegrate. But beneath the surface, the new is already being born. If this knowledge has opened your eyes, ask yourself, how can I navigate the fourth phase with integrity? How can I help build the seeds of the fifth phase, not through rebellion but through creation? True wisdom lies not in predicting collapse, but in planting the seeds of what comes after. The future belongs to those who understand that empires are merely chapters, not the entire book of human civilization.